This is, yeah.
Hello. Ray.
Close. Perfect day for it.
Yeah.
Blue sky. You see that palm trees? They're called, you know the name of it? There's a special kind of Seattle palm.
We'll get started in
grow
just a
here.
minute. You're welcome to
But
take a
unless you
seat.
put some kind of growth inhibitor, they'll just keep growing. It's great. I have a couple at my house and they're getting up too high. They're beautiful. They're kind of strong. What's your affiliation? Just trying to see who you are.
Where are you?
Raise your-
Actually, no, I'm actually How are you?
My dad went to Chicago 35
Okay.
which is the same high school. He was here 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I talked to him every third day.
Really?
He's born and raised.
I work at the office of short people. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to point him out.
Right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Kathleen Hosfeld. I'm Executive Director of Homestead Community Land Trust, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the celebration of the completion of Village Gardens. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that we stand on the occupied and unceded land of the Coast Salish people, and we can't talk about affordable housing or housing justice without standing with them in their quest for recognition and without honoring them for stewarding these lands since time immemorial. Village Gardens is an affordable home ownership development here in the Central District of Seattle that includes 10 homes priced affordably for income qualified households and 6 market rate homes, the proceeds of which will contribute to the affordability of the other 10. This project is significant in that its commitment to code-exceeding environmental standards. These homes were built fossil fuel-free, and the energy-efficient materials will lower the cost of home ownership through reduced utilities costs. It's also significant because Village Gardens is the first affordable home ownership project that will utilize the City of Seattle's community preference policy in the selection of buyers. The community preference policy gives preference in resident selection based on imminent or past displacement of residents from defined areas where displacement has been known to have occurred. And as we sell these homes, we will give first priority to those with historic ties to this area the right to purchase. I want to take a minute to thank a few key people who made this project possible. Our amazing development construction team, Joel Ng, Evan Chan, Don Marr of Edge Developers, Eric Kravitz and David Baker of Homestead Community Land Trust, our Homestead Board of Trustees, Real Estate Development Committee members, our financing partner, Heritage Bank, our advocates and partners, Erica Malone, City of Seattle, Miriam Roskin, we did it, just yay! Our community naming committee, of which Miriam was part, Ken Workman, Michael Tamayo, Amari Salisbury, and Stephanie Johnson Tolliver. Our attorneys, Kurt and Robert at Hillis Clark Martin and Peterson, K.Y. King Garrett, Africatown, and Triana Holiday of King County Equity Now, Nicole Bascom Green, our broker, Alex Pace, the City of Seattle Council and staff and the Office of Housing, and a special thank you to Philippa Nye of Ally Community Development, who helped us in the very early stages of this project. You may not know that the Community Land Trust model was created by Black civil rights leaders to prevent displacement while allowing people to build wealth through ownership. This model is all about the power that comes from community ownership of land. The opportunity to build on this land was a gift from the City of Seattle. This land and its contours, however, mirror many of the experiences we had in development. To begin, this land has very steep slope, and building these homes during the pandemic was a steep hill to climb, not just because of the engineering. Keeping workers safe during the pandemic, solving for rising costs resulting from labor conflicts and supply chain issues. I am so proud of Homestead staff and our partners at Edge and our other construction partners for getting this project done in spite of the many hills they had to climb. Another aspect of this land is its history. Because it's not flat, i.e. the slope, we doubt that it was ever used for human habitation, but it was used as an unofficial community garden. The diverse people who lived in homes near this land, people whose ancestors came from countries to the east, west, and south, used this vacant property as a shared space to grow food. They created a village of cooperation around food, and from this history, we named the development through a community process, Village Gardens. But I'll tell you one more thing about this land. It has views. From these homes, you can see Sam Smith Park and the Seattle skyline. And from here, we at Homestead and our partners Edge, we have a view of the future. We see an affordable future where the first households that buy here will build equity, but also pass on the opportunity to purchase to another income qualified household. We see an affordable future where home ownership is a choice within reach of all, not a commodity and not reserved for the affluent few. We see a climate resilient future where people live in right relationship with the environment and the land. We see an abundant future where all people have access to homes near their jobs, schools, and frequent transit. We see an equitable future where we have stood alongside communities at risk of displacement and gentrification to bring permanently affordable homeownership to their neighborhoods. And we see people who have been displaced from this neighborhood have the opportunity to return and rebuild the village. This development was made possible by a village of partners who came together to make it so. And with your help, this will not be the last, but only the beginning. These homes give us all, even if you do not live here, an example, a glimpse of a future that is affordable, sustainable, abundant, and equitable. Together, we'll make that future. Of the many partners for which we're grateful, we are especially grateful to the people of Seattle, whose levy dollars made this project possible, and to the City of Seattle for its gift of land and investment of levy funds. So it's with deep gratitude, it's my pleasure to welcome City of Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Thank you for not leaving me any speaking points. I'll be brief because I do want to hear from my friends Trayvon and Wai King and Teresa and my new friend Siobhan. So I look forward to hearing from them. I'll say a few things though that when I was, and I'll be brief, I remind you brief is a relative term, that many years ago when I was a young lawyer and we looked at what the state was doing on the I-90 RELID program, the RELID capital construction. That's how the city of Seattle had come across this property. And back then when I was a young lawyer, the same issues we were fighting for, looking at gentrification, looking at displacement, we started those conversations then. And so when I look at the hard work that's been done into a project like this is the vision and the dreams that we were talking about many years ago, and that's why I'm exceptionally proud to be here this afternoon. Housing, as I think many of us can agree on, is a key to generational wealth. This project sets a great example of what we can do when we talk about dismantling racism, when we talk about institutional practices that we're trying to correct. We have to do it sometimes one house at a time, one family at a time, and that's why this is more than symbolic. This is the real work that we have to do to achieve our goals. So under our administration, under the Harrell administration, I'm trying to be what we call, jokingly but seriously at the same time, is the housing mayor. We created a housing subcabinet. It started with our hiring of Director Michael Winkler Chin, who many of you know has been a strong housing advocate and social justice leader. We created under our Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington, we stripped away all other responsibilities and put the housing component in one person. We put all that under Marco Lowe, who's our Chief Operating Officer, to look at the numbers, the dollars, on how we could improve and optimize our investment in this kind of strategy. I want to say congratulations to the Homestead Community Land Trust, the edge developers, and everyone who made these homes a reality. I want to make a special recognition to Africatown Community Land Trust, who are making sure that families who purchase these homes will be reflective of the central districts, as we, your dad and I, and everyone will call it CD. The CD's past and present. That's what this is all about. We know for a fact that Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities have been historically disadvantaged in so many ways by both politicians and sort of the way of this country on how we've addressed many past inequities. But our voice is loud, and we are organized, and we have hard workers. We have a new generation of leaders doing this kind of work, and that's why I'm very proud to stand with them this afternoon. When we invest in permanently affordable home ownership, we're investing in an entire community, an entire ecosystem, not just individual households. When we look at people who will call these homes their home, I want to make sure, Sean, you'll be one of those people.
She already is.
She is. Where's my briefing people? You guys are supposed to let me know that before. We are proud that we're seeing multiple generations step into this kind of home ownership. We embrace this kind of welcoming spirit with open arms. I want to acknowledge a few folks especially. Miriam Roskin, OH's former deputy director, for working to secure this land for affordable housing development. Erica Malone from OH's strategic advisor for home ownership, for helping shepherd this project through. And as Kathleen said, the voters. Since 1981, we've approved 5 housing levies. This is critical investment by our voters. And as we renew the levy in 2023, these are the kind of investments we need this entire city to recognize. This is what makes Seattle special. When I talk about one Seattle, I'm talking about whether you are a nurse, you're a retired veteran, you're on a fixed income, or you're on Social Security, or whether you're wealthy or you're middle class, wherever however you describe the demographics, we need this kind of diversity. We need this kind of eradication toward racism. And this is how we address gentrification. That's what our One Seattle model is all about. And again, it cannot be done with the very people who are listening to me right now. And I'm going to close by saying this. This was done before I became mayor. Let me be very clear with you. I'm standing here looking pretty cool, I might add. But I recognize that I inherited a good hand. I inherited some challenges, but you all were doing this work in the middle of the pandemic, in the middle of a race and social justice reawakening, fighting for what matters. This is critical work. And while I like taking small 1 or 2 victory laps every now and then, I'm just proud to be a partner with you moving forward. As I started my remarks, I hope to be the housing mayor. We've created models within our city of Seattle structure to be better. our commitment is there, our hearts are there, our research is there, and the voters will step up for us again. So thank you very much, and I told you I was gonna be brief, but I told you it was a relative term. So thank you very much. I'm very proud to stand here.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know who I was supposed to introduce. And I'm going to say my dear friend,
There
I'm
we go.
so proud to work with Teresa Mosqueda, Councilmember Mosqueda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this is very exciting. Again, thanks to the mayor for all of the kind words and especially for complimenting the Office of Housing folks. I also want to say a few thank yous. Thank you to the folks who are standing behind us from Africatown, Homestead Community Land Trust, Edge Developers, the folks who put their heart and soul into this work, and Kathleen mentioned the workers who made these homes possible. Today is an exciting day to be here. And it's also on the same day that I woke up to a headline from the Seattle Times that talked about Seattle being among the top cities to see an increase in the cost of houses in just the last 4 months. Never mind the last 2 years. We are trying to address the most critical crisis in our city, and that is the lack of housing in the midst of a crisis in terms of affordable housing and the ability to access housing at all in this city. Today, we are looking at the antidote to that headline. Today, we are showing what it looks like to not only create homes for folks to live in, but economic opportunities for generations to come. The ability to have home ownership in this city is one of the only ways that we can continue to combat the racist redlining history that is still plaguing cities like Seattle across this country. Home ownership is the antidote to not only redlining, but the racist bank lending strategies, the restrictive zoning covenants that are in this city, and the inability for folks to get out of generational poverty. We don't have guaranteed retirement security in this country. And owning your home is one of the only ways to ensure that as an elder, you can retire with dignity. It is one of the only ways to ensure that we create equity in people's pocketbooks and equity in terms of a social justice approach to addressing these past racist problems. I talk about the past because the past is still prevalent. The past is still written into our public policies. And in order for us as public policy makers and advocates to erase that history, we must change public policy. And today, this action in partnership with Africa Community Land Trust and Homestead Community Land Trust, this is what it looks like to fight those past policies and create a more equitable future. This is what it looks like, frankly, to make sure that public policies are generated from community, get written into paper, become statute, and then become reality. Because it was folks from King County Equity Now and Africa Community Town who are part of our larger community housing roundtable that we convene 2 or 3 times a year to ask, what policies do you want? And I remember K.Y. King said, we need to not only make sure that there's money going into building affordable housing, but we need to make sure that the money that's coming into building affordable housing through the Office of Housing goes directly into the hands of organizations that are rooted in community, that are led by communities of color, that are committed to serving those who have been historically marginalized and kept out of housing. So we listened to that policy and we changed our Office of Housing Administrative and Finance policies because of that conversation, and said that when housing dollars come in the door, the first people in line ought to be folks who are from communities of color, who are led by community color organizations, led by folks who are serving communities most at risk of displacement, and that ought to be the priority. Today, you can see the outcome of that policy. And as I mentioned at a ribbon cutting ceremony for Habitat for Humanity this weekend, who also was similarly celebrating community home ownership, we don't get to see policies come into action very often. Often it's a piece of paper that goes to our dear mayor who's going to sign all of our great policies, but we don't get to see the tangible results of these conversations in a public policy. Today we get to see that result. Today we're seeing the result of not only making sure that we're prioritizing community of color-led nonprofits committed to building housing, but we're seeing community preference policy go into action, as Kathleen talked about. Another policy that came directly from community of color folks who are working on building affordable housing, who said we need to prioritize community preference so that those who are facing risk of displacement have first chance to get in the doors, and that we affirmatively market to those communities. Today is the result of affirmative marketing and community preference going into action. And finally, One of the first policies I had the privilege of helping to pass when I got into office in 2018 was saying we will not continue to sell public land to the highest bidder on the private market. And today, we see one of the first outcomes of that policy. Coming into office in late 2017, we all knew about the Mercer Mega Block sale, and there was a deep conversation going on in community about whether or not that public land could have been used for a bigger public priority. There is no bigger public priority than building housing. And in 2018, following action at the state legislative level that said city departments, including utilities, no longer have to sell their land at the highest rate on the private market. Instead, you're allowed to give it to Office of Housing and community partners at little to no cost. And when I say no cost, that ought to be $1. So what we did was we put that into statute and we said no more. Let's take these pieces of land off the private market. Let's put them in community ownership. Let's create opportunities for folks to have affordable housing. And today is the result of that policy, the land disposition policy, where we have taken this property off the private market. Today we see 16 homes stand where 3 mega mansions would have stood if we did not take it off the private market. This is what it looks like to remove public property from ever being sold. And it wouldn't be possible without the incredible leadership of community calling, demanding with urgency that these policies not only get put into place, but that we continue to do more. So yes, we want to pass the housing levy next year, and so much more to build more of these, and it wouldn't have been possible without Kay Wyken Garrett, with Africatown Community Land Trust, and it's my privilege to turn the microphone over to him. Thank you for all you do.
Good morning. Good to see everyone. And, congratulations to Homestead Community Land Trust and Edge Developers. And want to extend our appreciation for you really being responsive to the messages that came from our community around restoration and the need to be action-oriented about what is built, who is built for, and who is built with. You know, it's a strong principle within our work that nothing about us, without us, and that we don't want to build for, but we want to build with our community. So this is a project that I think represents a light on the path. It represents that another future is possible. Our work at Africatown Community Land Trust has, you know, scaled towards affordable rental initially, you know, but we don't want people, once they are stabilized and be able to access some positive economic mobility, that when they get to the time to buy a home, to build equity, to develop generational wealth, then they have to move out of the community. And so our work is around building an ecosystem, you know, to deal with the life cycle of housing needs that will stabilize and sustain a community that has been home to people of African descent, to black people for 140 years. This year, it was 1882 that William Gross bought the 12 acres of land from Henry Yester that established this community as a settling place for African Americans. We would like to see our community be able to continue to build on that legacy, to be here for another 140 years, but there's many significant challenges which we have just heard about, the cost of housing in the Seattle market, which has not been inclusive. You know, the economy, the growth has not been inclusive of all of the communities that have been here, that have helped make this city what it is. And so projects like this, again, it exemplify that we don't just have to throw our hands up and say that, oh, gentrification is just a, you know, force of nature, it's just a natural phenomenon, when we know in fact it's a product of choices. And we can course correct here in Seattle, where there's 3 companies that are building or trying to build condos and communities on Mars and the moon. We can course correct through different policy choices, through bold investments to take this proof of concept, right? This, you know, minimum viable product, as they say in the startup world that's here, and take it to scale so that the city, the future of Seattle is one that includes us, includes more of us, and is not just exclusive to a small segment of the population. So we're again, I think this is a very good day. This is a great, kind of foundation and building block. We know that there needs to be much more investment in affordable home ownership. When we look at how the dollars for affordable housing are allocated so that we can scale. We know that there's a role for the private sector. We know there's a role for philanthropy to work towards, again, making this city that is world-class, inclusive of our communities of the world, and not one class. And so, again, this project, we were able to partner with Homestead Community Land Trust, Edge Developers. We were also the partner that worked to make sure that black contractors, right, were building this project as well. Because we know that hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars goes into affordable housing. That's a lot of economic opportunity that can provide people with business ownership, support business ownership, support livable wage jobs that allow people to actually buy homes in this community. So it's very important that we had contractors and we work with contract design and development to provide technical assistance and capacity to our contractors working on this project. And we're glad that Nicole Bascom, who is again a fellow Bulldog, generations in this community, is the real estate broker and bringing people in to see and purchase these homes. And so again, I think this project represents a path forward that we need to really widen so that we can get more on and accelerate the mitigation and the stopping of displacement. And we look forward to really having policy and really having support for our legacy property owners that are still here, that are under pressure by the changes in the land use, that they don't have access to develop. And so again, we will continue to look for innovative models so that we can partner with such property owners, developers, such as Homestead Community Land Trust, so that we can keep people here and bring generations, and provide a pathway for generations to continue to be a part of the community and the city. Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce another, she's one of our community queens, rising stars in our community, the face of so many efforts, Ms. Anna Holliday, another fellow Bulldog. Anna, we gotta acknowledge our mayor's a Bulldog too. So welcome to the microphone, Ms. Anna Holliday, Media Director for King County Equity.
Oh my goodness. Hi everybody. How y'all doing today? I just gotta say, okay, for somebody who understood the concept of this from its inception, right? Homestead's been doing this work, but there's something very special about Village Garden Townhomes. There's something so special about this moment. When we talk about the need for affordable home ownership in the Central District, my ears perked up. I was all in from the start. And we had to do a lot of work to educate our community members on what this opportunity means to them, what it looks like for them. We had to make sure that they understood this is an opportunity for you to build generational wealth. This is an opportunity for you to stay in the community that you have called home for your entire life and for probably different generations of your family. We understand that need. My start at Africatown Community Land Trust and merging into King County Equity now as media director has allowed me to see how these kinds of projects and this work is so essential to our city in Seattle. Seattle is not just a city in the Pacific Northwest. Seattle is a city where you can create models that then scale up and resonate throughout the country. Okay? The idea is that what we're doing in this project is something that can be inspiring to so many other communities out there that are dealing with the very same metrics albeit ours are a bit on the extreme side. We know this. But so many cities across the country are dealing with these exact same dynamics around unaffordability in their city. What we need to do is we need to be intentional about the projects that we allow to be built on the land in Seattle. When we talk about standing on Duwamish land and recognizing our indigenous brothers and sisters out here, we can do more than just use our words to acknowledge them. We can acknowledge them with the ways that we utilize the land, the ways that we utilize the resources that come from the land. This is something that I'm really excited about. I don't know about y'all, but this is like a long time coming, okay? It is a long time coming. We're talking to a young black girl who was raised in the Central District, and in 2003, my parents could no longer afford to be here. So I experienced gentrification, and we had to move to a city called Federal Way, which I knew nothing about. Nothing at all. Still learning to this day, even after all these years. Because Seattle is my home. Seattle is my roots. So when we talk about being uprooted in a way that is so disorienting, I experienced that. My siblings experienced that. My parents experienced that. My grandmother experienced that. So for me, I'm already representing generations of folks who are saying, this is what we needed all along. Exactly what White King was just talking about here. How does a family who finally has the opportunity to utilize a metric of generational wealth building such as home ownership, but they can't do it in the neighborhood that they've called home for so long? We have so many families that have had to be displaced because of the rising cost of land, that it's unfortunate, and we don't talk about what they deal with on an everyday basis. My mother and I would drive down 23rd for years and just cry because we just didn't recognize it as our town. We didn't recognize it as our community and as our neighborhood. That's real. It hits our families in a real, tangible way. So the idea of us being intentional to build up the knowledge for community members to understand this is built for you. This is an example of so many more that we hope to come. Again, with all of the new policies and legislation that we pass, being intentional to do things that are repairing those past harms, literally providing reparations through the land and through projects like this. It is important that we do that together as a city. It's important that we do that from a community-rooted approach that is culturally responsive, as well as all of those folks up there in the top towers like the mayor. We have to be doing this collectively because that's the only way that we get things done. Early on, Kathleen talked about all of the partnerships that it took to get here. So you guys have an idea and an understanding of what it looks like for this to be a model that we take into the future and that we expedite in terms of providing home ownership opportunities for displaced residents, particularly in the Central District, but beyond, because Seattle is seeing it in all kinds of neighborhoods. We need to be intentional about our projects, and I'm so grateful that anything that I could do as a media director, as a community advocate, as an ambassador with Africatown, anything that I could do to help make this happen, I'm so honored and grateful to bring my energy to it. And with that, I just gotta say, this is just the beginning, you guys. There's so many more projects that you guys can all be a part of to ensure that Seattle is a place that's intentional about its housing affordability and its housing diversity. Thank you so much. I get to bring up Siobhan, who is a Homestead homeowner right now. Let's hear from Siobhan.
Thank you. So I know that everyone mentioned being a bulldog. Well, I'm not a bulldog, but my kids are bulldogs. I'm the mother of a bulldog, 3 of them actually. One graduating this year. But so yeah, it is so wonderful to be able to see this come. I mean, these are beautiful. I mean, this is amazing. I was blessed to be a part of Homestead. I was blessed to be able to become a homeowner, and that has meant so much for my life. On top of being a homeowner, I am now a member of Homestead's Board of Delegates. This is just, it's exciting and it's amazing. It is for affordable home ownership for people like myself. I'm a single mom. I have 5 kids. who grew up in this neighborhood, but because it became so affordable, we had to move out to Maple Valley, deep parts of Maple Valley. So, but I wanted to keep my kids still in school here. So they went to Garfield, they went to Washington Middle School, and so during that commute, it took them like 2 hours to get to school every day, which was hard. But I wanted to keep them here. I wanted to keep them with their friends, where the people that they grew up with, the kids they grew up with, and so we made it happen. 5 of us were in a small little 2-bedroom apartment in Maple Valley, and it was hard for us because we love each other, don't get me wrong. But did we want to be on top of each other every day? No. So when the opportunity came about for me to be able to purchase a home through Homestead, that was like a dream come true. That was something that I never thought would be even attainable or possible, and Homestead did that for me. So now, even though now they're graduating high school and they're ready to move out, but we were blessed to have a 5-bedroom apartment, a townhouse, not too far from here. And so it has just been a beautiful thing. It is something that is going to be in my family. It is something that can change how generationally things have just not been something that we would ever been able to have, or we would have thought we weren't able to have, and so it's just been amazing. I work with a local agency, Solid Ground, where we work with King County's homeless population, and to be able to see something like this be attainable for people who have been homeless and people who have experienced all kind of different barriers to finding housing, on top of just being able to afford it, is something that is a beautiful thing, and something that I'm excited to be able to let people know that this is something that is attainable, and this is something that can happen, and Homestead has made that a possibility. And I just hope that, well, I know that there is going to be so much more, and this is just the beginning of affordable housing for people in not just this community, but as far expanded as it can go. So again, I'm just thankful that to be a part of this. I'm thankful that I've had an opportunity to just share and grow, and thank you all for being here, and I will pass it all back.
Thank you again. In a minute, I'm going to hand the scissors to the mayor and ask him to cut the ribbon on this development. But I invite all of you to stay and tour the model units, which are marked with green ribbon. They're south of here. And we also have coffee and cupcakes with the Village Gardens logo on them in this garage. So help yourself to that as well. Thank you again, and without further ado, let's cut the ribbon.
Good.
Yeah, all right. So, let the camera get positioned here. Ready? Can y'all see it?
Putting our hands on the
Good.
Where are we gonna cut it at?
1, 2, 3. All right.
Take one.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Okay.
Okay, 1, 2. Oh, there we go.